Hello, dear readers. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Divya. I hope you're all doing well. I welcome you back to another video. So today I'm going to talk about a book that after finishing that book, it made me feel something like this.
Oh, fuck! Stupid fucking book.
So the book in question is The Dumb House by John Burnside. Now, before I tell you anything about this book, let us see the premise of the book first. Like, what is this book about? So this is about a man called Luke, and he basically grew up under the heavy influence of his mother. And when he was a child, his mother used to tell him different stories, bedtime stories. And one of the story was about this dumb house. It was an experiment carried on newborn babies to see the innateness of language. Like, where did language come from? Is it God sent? Like, do we already know language right from the moment we are born, or we discover it on earth, like learn it on earth? So this was what the experiment was about, and Luke was fascinated by this story. Now, as he grows up, his interest in life and death deepens, and his interest in language also deepens, which leads him to dissecting small animals. Like, first he starts with rats, and then he move on to toads, and then he move on to rabbits, and he is fascinated by the way a living organism works, like with their veins and their heart pumping. He can see when he dissects live animals, he learns the skill to dissect them right when they are alive. And this really fascinates him, the concept of life and death. After the death of his mother, his obsession finally deepens on the dumb house experiment, and he wants to carry out that experiment on his own, and that leads to him conducting bizarre experiments on his own children. So yeah, scary, isn't it? Like, the premise itself is so dark and horrifying that just kind of gives you the initial warning that what kind of book this may be. Now, I am very fascinated by language, and I kind of like reading psychological things. And one of my favorite booktuber recommended this book, so I was like, okay, let me just, yeah, sure, the blurb sounds interesting, and I would like to know what happens. Yeah, that was a trap. Yeah, so I stepped into the trap John Burnside set for his readers. And I will tell you the thing that troubled me. The entire storyline is troubling and trauma inducing. That is completely true. Now, the thing that horrified me most was not the experiments that he carried on these animals or children or his own children, which itself I know is very gross and traumatizing. Uh, it did affect me, but what affected me more was the way this man could manipulate, the way this man could make people believe that he cared about other people, but actually he did not care about anyone except himself and his own experiments. At the beginning, like, not at the beginning, but in the middle, kind of, even the readers will think that, okay, he's treating this girl at least nicely, he's buying her stuff, he's taking care of her, he's protecting her. But at the end of it, the readers will realize that that was just a manipulative phase that he was testing on this girl, and that was just for his own benefit. He himself confesses that, just show, this is a kind of quote, like, not exact, I'm not exactly quoting the line, but this is what the character said once, that just show a little empathy to these homeless girls, and they will think that you are God, kind of situation. And that horrified me. That made me think that we cannot, in any sense, know any person fully or completely. You will not be able to understand any person completely. And that kind of is very scary indeed, not knowing a person completely. And yeah, that was the thing that really scared me. And the thing about manipulation is that sometimes you may not even know that a person is manipulating you until and unless that manipulator himself wants you to know that he is manipulating you, or in rarer cases you get to know it yourself, which is like so horrifying to me. Being manipulated for another person's benefit is just the worst. It's just the worst. Fear Unlocked of being manipulated, this book did it wonderfully. It's divided into three parts, and if you can see, I don't know if you can see or not, but it is divided in three parts. I put tabs in there, and the first part was like just the entrance into the story, and it has some kinds of trigger which I did not really like reading. But then by the end of the book, like the third part, is actually the scary part, the horror part, in which he conducts these experiments on his children. I was horrified reading this book, and I was thinking to myself, why am I doing this to myself? Which brings me to the point that what fascinated me about this book, what is the thing that I actually liked. It is the way that Burnside chose to tell this story. This haunting tale was chosen to be told from a poetic perspective, which is the trap that this author has set. Whoever likes reading beautiful language, poetic language, that person will not be able to keep this book down, even if he or she is finding it disturbing to the core. That person will not be able to put it down, and I fall in that category. I love poetic language. I just love beautiful language, and I was like I fell under the influence of that language. And when I tell you it's a trap, it is because the story is so disturbing, but the language, immaculately beautiful. It's just, I cannot tell you how beautifully this horrifying tale is written. Created this strange desire to keep reading, keep wanting to know what will happen next. And the way the story is written, it rolls on smoothly, and it is just, the writing is just perfect. And there is this one person, A.L. Kennedy, he defines this book as a poetic novel in the best and most troubling sense, which I think is the precise and perfect description of this book. And this is just such a poetic menace that it just affects you and just leaves this scar in your mind that takes forever to heal. Let me read you some of the annotations that I wrote. So I wrote this annotation right after reading the first part of this book. I have never read about a person dying in so much details. It disturbed me. This book is, in fact, quite disturbing. It's very dark and poetic. The poetic writing is the only reason I want to continue reading this. Also, there is this strange desire to know what happens next. Reading just a few pages also feels like I have been reading this for such a long time. It is very heavy. The next quotation I wrote is at the very end of the book, and I wrote, this book has rendered me speechless. It was discomforting, horrifying, gross, all at once. The last part was so scary. I will never be reading this book again. However, this book did serve its purpose. It is supposed to be disturbing and horror inducing, and that it did beautifully. Poetic beauty, but bone chilling. That will tell you how I felt about this book. Yeah, so I will never probably reread this story because this created this wound in my head that is going to take a long time to heal, and I'm going to remember this book as a traumatic book for quite some time, longer than I would like to remember this book. It is just going to stay in your mind, and that is what it did to me. Please, if you are like thinking of reading this book, please check all the trigger warnings before reading it. And if you are sensitive, like emotional and very sensitive, these topics are really sensitive to you, I suggest that you read it when you are in full control of your emotions. I do not recommend you to read this book when you are in a vulnerable state. Some of you, like me, will find this book fascinating, the premise of this book fascinating, but I again recommend you to check the trigger warnings before picking up this book and read it while you feel emotionally detached from the world. Honestly, that is my recommendation. If you decide to read this book, read it when you are feeling emotionally detached from the world, which I think is a thing emotional people will understand. You will get me, emotional people, you will get me. That brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much for all the support that you are showing me till now, and I believe that you will keep showing your love towards this channel. Your support helps me to keep bringing contents for you, and because I'm a full-time employee, so it is very difficult for me to film and vlog and make video contents, but I love doing it. I love talking about books. Thank you so much for all your support. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click the bell notification so that you do not miss any of my videos. See you soon. Take care. Bye bye.